true, but nonetheless I don't believe it. Let me make a simple observation. Did you notice how every normative order, in the sense of rules that we obey, in order to be members of certain collective, from family to whenever you want, is never a simple set of rules, then you learn them, you are in. What's so interesting is that there are never simply only rules. There are always rules and then meta rules. That is to say, rules which tell you how to relate to these rules, to take them seriously or not, how seriously. For example, it's often that there is a prohibition. You shouldn't do it. But we all know that it usually means, in many cases, do it discreetly, or sometimes it's even, especially with some kind of sexual prohibitions, it's even a direct solicitation, do it or whatever. So then can be prohibitions which are not meant to be taken seriously. If you take them seriously, you appear an idiot, how should I put it? Like, you are here a little bit different, you take your state seriously. For example, this is my legacy from the socialist regime in my country, no? Like, if I try not to pay taxes to find a loophole, and if somebody tells me, how can you? We have to pay taxes all. I mean, the guy is an idiot. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay. But there is something much more interesting here, the opposite paradox. The paradox of, not of prohibition, which between the lines tells you, do it discreetly, whatever, but do it, but an offer of freedom. You are permitted something, but on condition that you don't use this option. As if you can do it, you are given the freedom to do it on condition that you will not do it. I mean, again, there are, especially, for example, in different political regimes, you have freedom to choose on condition that you make the right choice, how should I put it, no? Or even in our daily lives. For example, recently a friend from Japan told me, do you know that in Japan, workers have the right to 40 days holiday every year? But you are expected not to use this right in its full extent. The implicit rule is not more than 20 days. Then I asked them, okay, but then don't you simply write 20 days? He told me, you are an idiot, you don't get it. And he was right, I didn't get it. Why not? It's the same as, do you know, this is always what's fascinated me, because I think this is communication between people at its most mysterious and elementary. These empty gestures. You are offered something, but you shouldn't use it. For example, all of you probably were already in this situation. You were invited by somebody older, richer, to dinner. Now, you knew, it was absolutely clear in advance that he will pay. But isn't it kind of a ritual of politeness that you have to insist for some time, no, let me pay. Just don't do, by the way, what I did. Once I insisted too long, and then the guy said, if you want, do it. Then I have to stage all this comedy of, oh my God, I forgot my credit card or whatever. No? But there are other beautiful examples. For example, she is my friend, although we fight all the time theoretically. Personally, she's my friend, Judith Butler. Recently, I met her in Switzerland, and I was not too rude to her, but I used some degenerate creep, whatever. I mean, I'm horrible when I eat. So I saw that I did hurt her. So I felt bad. Afterwards, I phoned her. I called her. I told her, sorry, blah, blah. And then she told me, thanks, I appreciate it, but really, I wasn't offended. I knew you didn't mean it. You owe me no apology. She was absolutely sincere. And I was really grateful. But you see, the paradox is that it was possible for her to say, you owe me no apology, only after I did apologize. And this is not hypocrisy. That's the mystery of communication. You do something, the result is nothing. You do something which is declared superfluous. But in order to be declared superfluous, you have to do it. This is how, now you will say, what's the profit? The profit is respect, friendship, love, communication, true communication between us. I don't know, my favorite example even here is we have this ritual in my country. Let us say that I and a friend of mine compete for the same job. Let us say he wins, I lose. It's a ritual in my country that then the winner should say to the loser, listen, I know that you deserved it more. Why don't I step down and you will get the job? But of course, you have to say, no, 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 you can have it. What's the profit? Usually the friendship is saved in this way, frankly. No? So what I'm saying here is that the most delicate texture of our human relations operates at this level, at the level not of explicit rules, but of this between the lines rules, you know, like I give you an offer, but these meta rules tell me it's an offer to be rejected or whatever. And now I come to the concluding point, if you allow me a little bit of time, it is that I claim that what is going on today, what worries me, is that these unspoken rules, what I would call, following Hegel, the ethical substance of our being, this, I claim, is slowly but surely, if you want, is disintegrating today. There are some profound changes operating at that level. What do I mean by this? Let me take a book which I, as an atheist, should like, but I'm not. I think it's a horrible book. It was a big New York Times bestseller around a year ago, Sam Harris, The End of Belief. It tells all the title. The thesis of the book is our, and he means specifically our religions of the book, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and so on. Beliefs are ridiculously out of date. They belong to a totally different epoch. Today, they only cause ethnic slaughter and so on. So we have to outgrow them, and all he allows is some kind of a vague Buddhist, whatever, Oriental meditation with no epistemological commitments. But I think there is something significant here, that precisely the guy who claims this, the end of belief, is also the guy who advocates the use of torture in this book. And it's interesting to take a look at how does he justify torture. It's because, you know, the point is to find exactly what is wrong in his reasoning. His reasoning is very simple, basically. He starts with this problem. Why is it that most of us find it more problematic, much more problematic, to torture somebody in front of us than to push a button which will kill hundreds of thousands of people out there, out of our sight? He calls this the moon illusion, in parallel with this old perceptual illusion. If you don't know how it is, you think the moon is just a small object out there in the sky. But he says, in the same way that we know now rationally that moon is a quite large an object, that we should do the same restructuring of our ethical experience. So for him, it's a pretty horrifying conclusion, the fact that we cannot torture, most of us at least, somebody face to face is simply, I quote him, the reason for this inability to torture another person is every bit as neurological as those that give rise to the moon illusion. So simply, let's grow up, let's learn to put things in proper proportion, and following a ruthless utilitarian calculation, let's become aware that it's even your duty, as he puts it, to torture somebody in front of you, if in this way you can prevent much larger suffering. Now, Harris concedes that, nonetheless, we cannot simply outgrow our deeply ingrained habits, so he proposed something which I think is even more tasteless, a kind of a truth pill. Here is how he says, a drug that would deliver both the instrument of torture and the instrument of its utter concealment. The action of the pill, okay, I will cut it short. The idea is a pill which causes undescribable suffering, but not visible from the outside. You have a terrorist, instead of torturing him there, which would make you feel bad, you give him the pill, and the suspected terrorist, just seems to take a half an hour nap, But then he awakens and, I confess everything you want, no? The first thing that bothers me here is that how this fits perfectly our postmodern logic of, which I develop in many of the books, of decaf coffee, no? We like today's objects, products, without paying the price for them. Coffee, but decaf coffee. Beer, but beer without alcohol. A cake, but fat-free cake. And don't you think that this is only for products? I claim it's exactly the same in our intersubjective relations. Colin Powell's theory of war was precisely decaffeinated war. War, but no victims on our side. And to be a little bit more nasty, I would say that at least the way it is in its predominant form, multiculturalist tolerance is the tolerance of, to be nasty, the decaffeinated other, no? The other is abstracted. For example, I think this is the filthiest form of racism, to celebrate Native Americans, if you call them that. I found this disgusting, even more racist than Indians, because I spoke with one of them and he told me, Native Americans, what is this? Are we part of nature? What are you, cultural Americans? And he said, to be called an Indian, at least then my name is a monument to white man's stupidity. No, like they thought better. They thought they are in India, no? So, but did you notice how these politically correct guys, if you hear them talk about Native Americans, it's, you know, people who live in a holistic way, harmony with nature, have their dances spiritually connected to earth, nothing about torture, family rapes, whatever. And I don't say this in, I think, so what I want to say is that this is for me, this cleansing of the other is the most racist thing. So back to this is the first problem I have with Sam Harris. The second problem, but that's just a minor remark, is that, fine, so we are following KGB. Namely, I learned in a book about the misuses of psychiatry in Soviet Union that they already had it. The standard way to torture dissidents there was under the mask of, because there in Soviet Union in the last decades, dissidents being critical of the system was defined as a special form of social schizophrenia or whatever, no, megalomania that you can create. They injected something here in the region of your heart, and it was a terrifying experience. It slowed down your heart. You thought, like, you know, you are slowly dying. So the effect, from the outside, you just took a nap. It's exactly what Sam Harris described. From the inside, it was a nightmare. But, now I come to the truly central point. Nonetheless, you will say, but what's the point? What is fundamentally wrong with Harris? Here we come to the topic of what in Judeo-Christian tradition, and Freud also refers to this tradition in his theory of how we relate to others, we call the neighbor. The neighbor is something very radical in Judeo-Christian tradition. The neighbor is not the other who is like us. The neighbor is some kind of a traumatic presence, is the other person, if you want, in the abyss of its infinity. And there is always something monstrous about it. But the name of that monstrosity is freedom, no? You cannot ever be sure, you promised me this, but how do I know? How do I know that I can trust you? And so on, which is why we need promises with people which are not neighbors. If I were to know you totally, in a kind of a cognitivist or brain sciences dream, that I know the mechanisms, how you decide, I wouldn't need promises. Promises are here because precisely I don't know what an abyss you are. And I think we should be very careful here not to, how should I put it, not to idealize the notion of the neighbor. There is something irreducibly traumatic in the notion of the neighbor, which is why a little lesson in theology. If you look already at the Old Testament, I claim that the true function of the Ten Commandments is not so much to enable you to love your neighbor, but also to keep a neighbor at a proper distance. It can be very unpleasant, intrusive, to come too close to it. Why? Let me give you a simple example. I hope you were, but it's not as loving as it may appear, you were, some of you at least, I hope most of you all, in a situation where somebody declared intense love to you. Somebody approaches you and you see that it's sincere, it's not a joke. You are the center of my life, I totally love you.